Adam Lemery, and Ben Schneider. We have a lot to talk about, 11 races to recap, but we'll go through it all within a reasonable time frame. And we want to thank our Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark, and welcome back, Robin. You too can invest in the Grid Network by clicking on the link to our Patreon or buy me a coffee, a one-time contribution for your favorite on-air personality. Definitely, we encourage everyone to keep us on the air right here on the Grid Network. We got a lot to talk about, as I mentioned. We're going to get straight into it. Formula One, Australian Grand Prix. What a race we saw, and what a development in the championship.
Yeah, quite a development indeed. In the 2022 Australian Grand Prix, set the record for the largest attendance in Australian sports history. Such a big deal for all the folks down under. First time back in Melbourne since 2019, and for the first time in a long time, the pole setter won the race. Charles Leclerc got the big win and has a big championship points lead over the field. Max Verstappen didn't go well at all for him. Second DNF in 3 races. Sergio Perez and George Russell got their first podium of the year. Carlos Sainz crashed out early. Lewis Hamilton 4th place, and Leclerc was the only. Leclerc is the only driver to finish on the podium in the first 3 races. Starting with you, Ben, what does this victory mean for Charles Leclerc and Ferrari's confidence that they can control the championship this year?
Well, it does great things for their confidence, obviously, but let's remember that we are 3 races into a 23-race championship in a series that doesn't award points for every position. So Leclerc is one mechanical retirement or accident of his own away from seeing the vast majority of his lead evaporate here. I think when I look at Ferrari and Charles Leclerc, obviously it's their best season that they've had in quite some time, and I think we're kind of doing a disservice to Leclerc if we say, look at how much he's improved over the years. We've always known that he knows how to drive a Formula One car. It's just the Ferrari Challenger has not been at the level it needs to be at to allow him to compete with Mercedes and Red Bull for a championship. Now they have a car that can do that, and they seem to have the edge right now. I think, however, Red Bull are probably right there. You look at Verstappen getting the win in Saudi Arabia and where he's been on pace. I think they're there. Obviously, they just need to hammer out their reliability issues. 2 retirements in the first 3 races is simply unacceptable. But at the same time, I don't know that that's we surely can't expect that to keep up at that rate as the entire season goes on. I'm sure everybody at Milton Keynes is working very hard to try to figure out the result or the cause of this, rather, and what's keeping Red Bull from getting the results that they need. So, I'm sure as the season continues on, we're going to see this even out a little bit. I think Leclerc is obviously what he's on pace to do right now to run away with the championship. I just don't see that lasting. It's a super long season, the longest in Formula One history, assuming we don't get any more rescheduling or interruptions or anything like that. I think Red Bull are, certainly are still in the fight here. But for Leclerc and Ferrari, the confidence has to be at the highest of highs that it's been in a while, at least. I think they really couldn't have started the season any better than they have.
For Ferrari to start the season off like they're doing right now, has to be a huge confidence boost, especially after the years of all the memes where the Ferrari strategies have been compared to clowns, that the race always slips away. Now they're like a new team. They're just going out there and they are bringing their A game. They are winning, and everybody else looks like they need to step it up. Reliability for Red Bull. Yes, we know they're going to fix that. But right now, Max Verstappen with only 25 points because of 2 DNFs, they got to really start performing up there. But Charles Leclerc at the end of the race said he was just maintaining pace. If he's bluffing, that's one thing. But if he was telling the truth, everybody's in trouble because that Ferrari is very fast and looks like it has a lot of pace. One of the big things we're going to look for throughout the season is if the others can start catching up to him and for other Ferraris. But right now, you got to feel good if you're in Maranello. The Ferrari teams, they just look like something from back when Schumacher was racing. They have that confidence, they have that swagger, and they're going for that championship.
Yeah, Joe, Ferrari is definitely looking extremely strong right now, and I want to see if they can keep up this form because it's amazing. And I agree with what Ben said about Red Bull's current form. It's unacceptable to have Max Verstappen retire in 2 out of 3 races to start off the season. Now he's on a massive hole in the championship, and yes, we have 3 races down with 20 to go, and Leclerc certainly has to feel good to have Max Verstappen 46 points behind him. George Russell's in second place and 34 points behind. So Leclerc already has a full race advantage over the field. So at this point, Leclerc could afford to have a bad day and no big deal for him. While Max Verstappen, he doesn't need to have many more bad days, or it's going to be a lot harder for him to try to defend his Formula One World Championship. And Max Verstappen's rival last year, Lewis Hamilton, he's currently fifth in the points ahead of Max Verstappen. So both Max and Lewis have a lot of work to do if they want to take the fight to Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. And starting with you this time, Joe, do you believe Mercedes will have a winning car within the next two races?
It's going to be really hard. We got Imola coming up. That's going to be a race where I feel the Mercedes, it could be fast, but qualifying is going to be very important. It's a very tricky track to make passes in. One of the big things, Red Bull, we know they're going to be up front. We saw Verstappen been up there. Sergio Perez, last year it seemed like it was at Imola, he got the pole, but falls back in the start. He's been running really good. Potential to win in Saudi Arabia. Of course, we all know the bad luck he faced with the safety car. But this race weekend, he looked really good. He got around Lewis Hamilton. Would have been third place. Of course, we know what happened to Max Verstappen. He gets second place. So for Mercedes, if George Russell, particularly George Russell, if he could get a good qualifying spot ahead of Lewis Hamilton, I think he could be the driver that's going to get the first win for Mercedes. That's something I'm predicting. I think George Russell will get a win first instead of Lewis Hamilton.
Joe, I completely agree with you 110%. Do I think Mercedes is going to win one of the next two races? Yes. And who do I think will win? George Russell. You know, going back to what you guys just talked about, I can remember when Michael Schumacher drove for Ferrari and the dominance he had. What we're seeing with Charles Leclerc could bring back memories from all the F1 fans who love from back in the day when Michael Schumacher dominated in a Ferrari. So I think after what we saw today, Red Bull needs to step it up. Yeah, Checo finished on the podium, but I think they got a long way to go to catch Charles Leclerc in that Ferrari. Right now, he's on another planet, and we have Imola coming up, so it's going to be interesting to see if Charles Leclerc can continue this momentum going into that race in a couple weeks.
I'm actually going to respectfully disagree with you, Adam, on Mercedes. I actually don't think they're going to have a race-winning car within the next two races. I still think that they're a little bit behind the Ferrari and the Red Bull right now, but I do think that Mercedes will eventually get a race win this season with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. But I like to put it maybe like 5-6 races down the line in its current state. But I do believe they'll eventually get there. I just don't see that happening within the next two races. And in the race, it was really interesting listening to Lewis Hamilton on the radio when he basically accused the team of screwing him over with George Russell finishing ahead of them, but it actually wasn't the case because Mercedes saw a moment during the safety car when they could pull George in, and he was able to get out in front of Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton, so they took advantage of that break right there, so they could get George in, so they could gain an extra position. And when George Russell when it was announced that he would be driving with Mercedes, I predicted that at some point Russell and Hamilton were going to butt heads. Is this potentially the start of it? I don't know, but I think later on as we get down the road in the season, things are going to heat up a little bit. I don't think it's going to become something like Lewis and Max or anything like that, or Nico and Lewis. But I think there could potentially be some unhappy people at Mercedes. And we saw Aston Martin have a horrible weekend. They spent most of it repairing one or both cars. Red Bull saw Max Verstappen go out with reliability issues, another DNF. And one of the biggest surprises, Williams ended up scoring a point with Alex Albon, and he did not pit until the last lap for fresh tires. And every team has scored a point except Aston Martin. Could we see consistency become more important than wins.
Yeah, I do believe so. And kind of surprising that Aston Martin hasn't scored yet. They looked good going into this weekend. Unfortunately, you mentioned Kobe. Their luck, well, they must have found a black cat or a window smashed or something like that because you know they they didn't look good at all. But I think consistency this year. I think that's going to be a key going forward in this F1 World Championship. Yeah, Charles Leclerc is the points leader, and we're just 3 races in, but it's a long, long season. Um, Anything can happen at any given day in Formula One. Um, you know, so it's going to be interesting. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything develops going forward this season.
Consistency is always more important than wins in a full season championship. Just go ask Ryan Newman and Matt Kenseth how that worked out on the NASCAR side of things in 2003. So, I think I'm thinking of Red Bull in particular. They seem to have a fast car. I'd actually kind of disagree with you a little bit, Adam and Joe, there. I think they're actually much closer to Ferrari than it may seem based on point standings. Verstappen's just had retirements in 2 of the first 3 races, so it looks like he's a lot further back. I think their pace is actually right there. They just need to hammer out the reliability issues that they've had. So for them, absolutely, they have to get their consistency down. It doesn't matter if they're fast enough to win. I saw even George Russell had a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek social media post. I think it doesn't matter how fast your car if you can't get to the finish like he did. So I think that's what Red Bull need to be focused on right now. We also have to keep in mind, I think for 7 out of 10 teams on the grid, I think they recognize that most weekends they're probably not going to be competing for wins anyway. We saw Daniel Ricciardo get a win for McLaren last year. Esteban Ocon got one for Alpine, but those took extraordinary circumstances and a perfect storm of events to put them in the right place at the right time. So for most teams right now, and I'd even throw Mercedes in there, I think, they're, again, closer than some people may think, but I don't know that it's going to be within the next 2 races that we see them up there fighting Ferrari and Red Bull for race wins on a regular basis. So for them right now, they just need to focus on going week in and week out and getting as many points as they can and focusing on consistency, because I think that's what they're focused on most of the times. If they're being honest with themselves, they know that a win on most weekends is usually out of their grasp.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Ben. You made a lot of great points. Mercedes, they're just going to have to try to focus on getting as many points as they can right now in the constructors with Hamilton and Russell and Red Bull. They can't do anything without a reliable car. That was a really interesting point that George Russell made, and he is absolutely right. And speaking of reliability issues and a whole bunch of other things going wrong, I want to focus on Aston Martin and the weekend where everything seemed to go wrong for them, especially for Sebastian Vettel, who was making his 2022 Formula One debut after testing positive for COVID, missed both races at Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. And looking at Sebastian Vettel's horrible race weekend, free practice 1 had an issue with the engine, then he got fined for riding a scooter, and he wasn't able to make any laps in free practice 2, and then had a crash in free practice 3, in which caused him almost not to make the qualifying session. But because of crash in qualifying, he was able to make just a time lap and qualified at the back of the grid. And then in the race, he was struggling out there with the handling, ended up crashing out of the race. And out of all of the drivers that competed in Australia, I think Sebastian Vettel is the one who really wanted to go home the most. The Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix coming up in a couple of weeks' time, I think it'll be a great time for Aston Martin to reset and just keep pushing forward with their program.
Keep pushing forward with the program, get it up going so that way they could try and score some points. Now, one driver that seems to have the right program going on in the Supercars, Shane Van Gisbergen, almost said it, another win. But guess what? He didn't get that win. He was in second place, but then a tire failure while in second place ended his race in disappointment. Chaz Mostert got the win, his 3rd of 2022, and still Shane Van Gisbergen has a big lead exiting Melbourne in the points. And the next race weekend is April 30th through May 1st. Adam, it feels like deja vu again. We said last year Shane Van Gisbergen looked like he could run away before the long COVID break. here we are again. It looks like this time, though, with that tire failure or bad luck starting in the back, if he doesn't have those things go wrong, he wins. So I got to ask you, Adam, can any other team step up to Shane Van Gisbergen and Triple Eight Racing, or Shane Van Gisbergen start making room on his shelf for another championship trophy?
Well, Shane Van Gisbergen has a huge lead leaving Melbourne this weekend. And if other teams don't step up, that even includes SVG's teammate Brock Feeney. SVG could wrap up the championship before the Adelaide 500 in December. He has 100. Take a look at the standings here on the screen. SVG has a 144-point lead on Anton De Pasquale, 162-point lead on Chaz Mostert, 181-point lead on Will Davison, and give a call to young Brody Kostecki, who's fifth, 250 points behind, and sixth is SVG's teammate Brock Feeney. So I think the season is still young, but if what we saw at Albert Park in Melbourne going forward with SVG dominating, a lot of supercar fans are probably not going to be happy, to see SVG dominate again. But the season's still early. We still got a long way to go. So anything can happen. All Shane has to do is have one race, two races to bad luck, and I think the championship will be closer. But right now, it's SVG's championship to lose. He's on another planet right now, and it's going to be hard to beat that number 97 Red Bull Ampol Racing Holden Commodore. Hopefully we don't see another runaway like we saw last year. I know a lot of fans wouldn't like it, but looks like right now it's SVG's championship to lose.
Shane Van Gisbergen, the championship, it really does seem like it's his to lose. Another team really has to step it up. They can't just rely on Shane Van Gisbergen having bad luck and not scoring a win. You need to go out there, bring it to Shane, whether it's racing him hard, out using strategy to get around him. They need to really step it up because it just seems like he is starting to run away. He has a rookie teammate. Yes, rookie, you're going to be in there your first year. It's always a tall order to go up there, especially with a driver, a teammate like Shane Van Gisbergen. But this championship is starting to feel like a little bit of a runaway. So it's going to be really interesting to see with the Supercar Series if Shane Van Gisbergen can continue this or if another team could step up. But now we'll go to a series where it doesn't seem like really anybody's running away yet.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, let's move on to Formula E here. The ABB Formula E Series saw a big shakeup as the points leader crashed out early. Eduardo Mortara finished 22nd and lost the points lead. So John-Eric Verne is the new points leader. Robin Frijns is second, and Mitch Evans is fourth now with 54 points after coming into the race weekend with just 1 point to his name. Evans is the first driver to win 2 in a row since Antonio Felix da Costa won 3 in a row in Berlin in 2020. That season, Evans was a favorite for the championship. But once Formula E went to Berlin coming back from the pandemic break, his team didn't perform during that 6-race event. So on that note, we'll bring in our friend Ed Hunter from Formula E Zone. Good to see you, Ed. Are we setting up for a DS Techeetah versus Jaguar duel for this championship here this year?
Hard to say, really, because it feels like there are about 6 teams all fighting for that point. At the moment, it's Mercedes leading. They led the team's championship going in, and they're still just about holding on by about 9 points from Porsche, who, of course, won in Mexico with the 1-2. So certainly Techeetah and Jaguar were very strong in both races in Rome, especially Jaguar, of course, in the hands of Mitch Evans, who won both races. But yeah, it's going to ebb and flow. There's certainly Rome, and it was interesting that Sam Bird said this, that Rome was more of a typical Formula E circuit with like 90 degree. It's sort of point and squirt circuit, as they call it, where it's kind of these very short 9-degree sort of corners and a couple of chicanes and only a couple of longer sort of corners that are still quite slow speed. So it sort of very much suits the characteristics of the Jaguar a lot better than a track like, say, Diriyah or Mexico, where Jaguar really just struggle for pace and were nowhere in qualifying especially. And they definitely seem to finally get it right in Rome. And it certainly bodes well for the rest of their season, but it's certainly not going to ebb and flow. And it's certainly not going to all go Mercedes' way as we thought it would at the beginning of the season. Because we got at least 3 or 4, like I said, challenges there in the form of Porsche, Techeetah, Venturi, who run the same powertrain as Mercedes, Jaguar, and even Envision, who use the old Audi powertrain. That's still got some life left in it. So could go either one of those, I think, can win the team's championship. Drivers, even more open.
Well, as we mentioned, and as we continue to mention on this show, it seems like Formula E can be one of those Wheel of Destiny series where we have a different winner week in and week out. We had Mortara come in leading with Drivers' Championship, and that, as you mentioned, Mercedes leading with Teams' Championship, and neither one looked the strongest this weekend. Nick DeVries scored no points at all throughout 2 races this weekend. So has the competition caught up to Mercedes, or was this more just a situation where it was a track that didn't suit the Mercedes powertrain cars?
Yeah, well, interesting question. I think definitely it was a track that really, really suited the Jaguar. But Van Dorn was on pole in the first race, of course. So it wasn't the case of Mercedes lacked speed. It was more efficiency that was the problem for them. The Jaguar were just a lot more efficient. And even the Audi powertrain in the Envision, they seem to have done something with the software at that team, because Freins was able to beat Van Dorn in the first race and indeed leads him by 2 points in the Drivers' Championship now, though it was Verne with his 4th and 2nd that really jumped all the way into the lead, even though Verne was complaining actually about the race, that he doesn't like he didn't like the fact that in Mexico the Porsches just ran away from him. Here Evans just ran away from him, so it seems that he doesn't like that these other teams have got the jump on Techeetah and are being untouchable, which is quite funny when you consider that Jev won 2 Drivers' Championships in a row and was pretty much considered untouchable in seasons 4 and 5. But yeah, I'm sure Jev will. I'd be very surprised if Jev doesn't win a race this year. And it was actually today, a year to the day since I think the last race that Jev won in Formula E, which was in Rome as well, in I think the 3rd round of the championship. It was the first race in Rome last year in 2021. But of course, he finished 2nd today. Almost him and Evans had a very, very good battle right at the end, where Verne sort of thought about having a go, but didn't quite want to blow all those points for 2nd, and just decided to settle for those 18 points rather than risking crashing and not getting any at all. So, but anyway, I'm sort of getting a bit off track from the question. Is it was this a track that suited Mercedes? It certainly suited them in quali, but not over a whole race distance. And I think Mercedes will go back to the drawing board. De Vries, Van Dorn had a very good weekend, but De Vries had a very poor one in the first race, having a reliability issue that took him out from the lower points positions. And then in race 2, he qualified badly down in 13th, and then got in an incident with Sete Camara, which wasn't shown on TV, but Sete Camara, he sort of squeezed him in the wall and then got a penalty. So De Vries, I think, finished 6th or 7th on the road, but dropped down to dead last after the 10-second penalty was applied. So it was a very... I did talk in Mexico about some of De Vries' defending being a bit on the limit, and I think it proved that he got a little bit desperate trying to get past Sete Camara here, and it backfired on him. So, yeah, certainly some learning curves there, but Van Dorn having a much stronger time with it.
And taking a look at the Drivers' Championship, as you can see on the screen, 9 points separate the top 4, and Mercedes still lead the Teams' Championship by 9 points. 11 races remain in the season. The next race weekend is at Monaco. Last year, Evans versus DaCosta showed that you can still pass on the streets of Monte Carlo in these Formula E cars. So coming to Monaco, Mercedes, Jaguar, and Porsche have combined to win all the races this year. Ed, do you see another team as a favorite to win that hasn't yet won so far in 2022?
I certainly think that Robin Freins and Envision have got a win in them. There's certainly a lot of drivers in the teams, like, for example, I'm pretty sure that Van Dorn hasn't won a race yet this season in the Mercedes. Lotterer got very close to the win today and then sort of ended up sort of being shuffled back in the closing stages because he didn't time his attack mode as well as Evans and Verne did, basically. I think neither of the SG drivers have won so far this season. And then, of course, you've got the likes of Degrassi and the Venturi hasn't won. Like I said, Frines. I think Jake Dennis as well, who was second today. I think the Andretti is actually a very strong car over one lap. If they could get somewhere where it's a lot harder to overtake, then I think Jake Dennis could certainly squeeze a few wins there because he's certainly been driving very well. It's just the efficiency of the Andretti isn't quite there yet. And I predicted Oliver Rowland for the win in the Mahindra. I certainly think Mahindra could turn things around because Alex Lynn was able to win with the same car in London last season. And there was a little bit of luck there, but certainly Alex Lynn put a great performance in. And I think Oliver Rowland is fully capable of doing the same. So I wouldn't completely rule out Oliver Rowland and Mahindra, but certainly it was a weekend to forget for them. But I feel a lot more confident that Envision and Frines can sneak a win somewhere with that old Audi powertrain because they're still able to get a surprising performance out of it. 2 podiums, second and third, over this weekend in Rome, and that definitely bodes well for them. I think him and Evans were the 2 big standout drivers over the whole weekend. So, and as you say, Evans versus Da Costa and Frines, of course, in Monaco last year was an amazing battle, but ebbed and flowed between the 3 of them. And in the end, it was Da Costa who came out on top. And I think Da Costa, after a very difficult weekend in Rome, where he just kept getting into incidents, basically, I think Monaco will be a much stronger one for him, and we're going to see the best of the best come out on top. And it's great to see Formula E continue to use the big GP layout. And in fact, we're using a slightly new version of the Nouvelle Chicane that's a lot more similar to the one F1 uses. They used a slightly different one for Formula E last season. It was the exit, I think, was a little bit wider. So they narrowed it up and made it a bit even more punishing. So, I'm absolutely looking forward to that on April 30th, which is in about 3 weeks' time. And certainly another thing before we end this segment, there's some great interviews on Formula E Zone that Jack Pickering, who's been on site in Rome, has done with all the drivers from, not all the drivers, but quite a lot of them from Saturday and Sunday's races. And I highly recommend listening to those if you want to get a bit more insight that Jack Pickering has found from the likes of Mitch Evans and a lot of the other drivers that have gone to talk to him. Degrassi gave some great interviews as well, even both Neo drivers as well. Gave some really good interviews today after their race. So, check that out if you get a chance.
And we thank you for your time. And, to let our viewers know, be sure to subscribe to Formula E Zone on YouTube. Ed does a really good job over there. So, Ed... I'm
glad you think that, Adam.
And before we let you go, I got... what's your Grid 1 shining moment from this weekend?
Well, certainly there are 2 that come to mind from Formula One. I certainly thought, you mentioned it very briefly, that Alex Albon did a superb job in the Williams. I was really glad to see that because I'm a big Williams fan at heart for like many, many years since I was a kid, like in 2002, and started watching Formula One. I always liked the Williams team. And I think it's great to see Albon running in 7th on merit generally on the hard tyre, and it was amazing to see him just be able to keep the hard tyre last like nearly 57 laps or whatever it was before he had to pit, end of 57 and complete lap 58 on a new set of tyres. So he ended up getting 10th in the end and just beating Guyan Zhu to the final point spot. So certainly that's great for Williams, who have not had an amazing start to the season, but hopefully it bodes well for Albon, who of course had to take a year out as well. And has certainly showed that he's the tyre whisperer in the Formula One field, and certainly giving Sergio Perez a run for his money. In Formula E, I would say the shining moment was Oliver Turvey's race today in the Neo 333, because he started at the very back of the field, took advantage of the chaos around him, did a brilliant strategy. Jack Pickering got a great interview with Oliver Turvey today, and he was extremely positive about his performance and how just said that he was just elated. So he managed to get all the way up to 7th by the end and get 6 crucial points, the first points that Neo 333 have scored all season in round 5 of the championship. So with there's 16 races in total this season, so 11 left to go. Neo could have gone up to 9th because Dan Ticktum in the other Neo also scored a point today, although he sounded a lot less enthused about it because I think he was a bit disappointed. He felt he could have done a bit better, and the typical Dan Ticktum always always thinking it could be better kind of way. And he gave a pretty funny interview where he was just so grumpy with Jack Pickering. But certainly he did at least praise the progress that the team have made. And it's great because that team has struggled for such a long time now to see them get a top 7 finish and a double points finish. They haven't got both cars in the points since Buenos Aires season 2 when it was Turvey and Piquet Jr. driving for the team. And that shows how long Turvey has been at the team. So great to see that loyalty rewarded. Great to see a smile on Oliver Turvey's face because he's such a humble, nice guy. I've had the privilege of meeting him a few times. And so those would be my 2 shining moments, but especially great to see Oliver Turvey, who I've been such a huge fan of since he joined Formula E at the end of the first season, getting that horrible Neo car into the points and showing that maybe there is some life left in that thing yet. And 9th in the team's championship. So they've got 7 points to their name. Let's hope they can get a few more before this season's over.
Once again, Ed, we thank you for coming on our show tonight. We know it's late in the UK, so we'll let you head off to bed now. And really, thank you. We'll see you again next time.
Cheers, Kobe. Edward out.
All right. See you, Ed. And moving on to our next subject. Yesterday, we wondered if Cadillac would sweep the DPI era at Long Beach. We got our answer, and they did. Early in the race, Sebastian Bourdais was leading from pole. He tried to overtake a GTD Porsche through the hairpin and ended up hitting the wall with the nose of the car. Bourdais' number 01 Cadillac DPI fell all the way down the running order to last place in the DPI class and many seconds back. However, Chip Ganassi Racing brought a fast Cadillac to the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach. Bourdais started gaining back all that lost time and made a stunning drive all the way back to the lead of the race before the end of his driving stint. His co-driver Ringer van der Zande survived a few late race restarts, holding off the other Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac to give the number 01 Ganassi prototype the victory at Long Beach for a CGR 1-2 result. After such a tough start to the season at Daytona and Sebring, Bourdais and Van der Zande picked up an important win over teammates Earl Bamber and Alex Lynn, who won the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. Adam, does it look like Chip Ganassi Racing are the early favorites for the DPI championship?
Yep. They had, I got to give a call to Sebastian Bourdais. You mentioned Kobe, what happened. That was an incredible drive from Sebastian Bourdais. And right now, in the DPI class, Chip Ganassi Racing is on another planet right now. Yeah, I know there's so much strong talent in the DPI class with Wayne Taylor Racing, among others. But if you want to win the DPI championship, you're going to have to find a way to knock off the 01 and the 02 for Chip Ganassi Racing. I think it's their championship to lose as we head to WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca on May 1st.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Adam. It really seems like if you want to win the DPI championship this year, you're going to have to go through Chip Ganassi Racing. It really seems like they're pouring all the resources, GM, the factory program and the prototypes into those 2 Ganassi Cadillacs because they're on a whole different planet. When you look at the other Cadillac teams, Action Express Racing, Wheeling Engineering Entry, and then the JDC Miller Motorsport Mustang sampling Cadillac. It just seems like those 2 Ganassi cars are on a completely different planet, and they're flexing their muscles early because the new era of prototype racing starts next year. They're going to be fielding the Cadillac LMDH car that's going to compete in IMSA and the World Endurance Championship, and Chip Ganassi Racing is definitely going to have their hands full next year, and it's going to be interesting to see how many races they're going to win this season. But right now, the 01, the 02, which one's going to be the favorite for the championship? Hard to say because both of them are running extremely well to start off the season. And the other competitors in DPI, they're going to need to be on their A game moving forward for the rest of the season because Chip Ganassi Racing is at the top of the mountain right now. And we'll need to see which DPI teams are going to knock them off the top. And in GTD Pro, it looked like Corvette Racing was going to get the class win, but a big mistake on pit road ended up ruining their day, and they also ended the race for the FAF Motorsports Porsche. Corvette lost one of its wheel nuts, and it punctured the radiator in the FAF Porsche, so Corvette got a drive-through penalty, and it was game over for the GTD Pro Porsche. FAF Motorsports driver Matthew Jomine told NBC Sports the wheel nut incident ending their race was something he's never seen before in motorsport. And here's a video of the incident courtesy of FAF Motorsports on Instagram. As you saw in the video, the FAF crew started performing at a normal pit stop, and you saw the wheel nut from the Corvette pit box fly into the picture, causing damage to the Porsche's radiator. With both of these cars out of contention for the win, it opened up the door for the number 23 harder racing Aston Martin of Ross Gunn and Alex Riberas to take the GTD Pro victory. Then in the regular GTD class, the number 1 Paul Miller Racing BMW M4 GT3 Brian Sellers and Madison Snow took the class win in dominating fashion. As Adam said, next up, the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship returns on May 1st at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. You're going to see DPI, GTD Pro, GTD classes back in action, and joining them, you're going to see LMP2.
Going to be very excited once to see them at Laguna Seca. And we had a very exciting MotoGP race at Circuits of the Americas. Great crowd showed up at Circuits of America for the MotoGP America's Grand Prix. Like Formula One, Formula E, IndyCar, and NASCAR, we saw the first repeat winner of 2022, Enea Bastianini, with a late pass on Thriller Jack Miller with 3 laps to go. He also takes a points lead. Alicia Espargo was not a factor and lost a points lead today. Tough break for him early on with the weekend, not making it into Q2. But Bastianini, what a great weekend. And Adam, I have to ask you, did Bastianini prove he's the real deal when it comes to competing for this championship?
I'm going to say yes, even though it's still young for MotoGP. And surprisingly, we haven't seen some of the heavy hitters win this year. Defending champion Fabio Quartararo has not won. Marc Marquez, who we all picked to win. And unfortunately, he had a really bad start. And what a drive. He came through with a 6th place finish. He hasn't won. Johan Mir hasn't won. There's so many good riders in MotoGP right now, but like I just said, the season is still young. So Enea Bastianini leading the points, I think that's pretty cool for him. But we'll see what happens as MotoGP heads over to Europe now. And it's going to be interesting to see how everything develops. We talk about Formula One, in their championship. Well, if you're not a fan of MotoGP, you should be, because this year's championship, there's so many good riders in that series. I don't think we'll know who wins the championship until we get probably maybe 3 to 5 races left to go in the season.
It looks like it's going to be one of those championships just like what we saw in 2020, where it came down towards the end. Bastianini joins Rins and Marquez as the only riders to win at Circuits of America. Marquez, as you mentioned, a horrible start. We all picked him to win this race, and he had a adventurous race. With that horrible start, first lap, exiting turn 1, he was last place. He put on a heroic effort to come up all the way up towards the top 10, 6th place. Great battle with Fabio Quartararo for that position. I think he showed all the doubters he is back, and that really, if he's 100%, he is going to be contending for the win. And everybody has been asking, what if he didn't have that bad start? Yes, he would have been on the front battling. And Adam, I have to ask you, is Marquez really the man to watch? And your thoughts on a potential Bastianini versus Marquez as we get to Europe?
Oh boy. Yeah, what we saw today, Marc Marquez, after what happened in Indonesia, he's back. And I think even though he's not in the top 10 right now in points, don't count him out at any point of the season. Like you said, Joe, we're not going to Europe where you could see Marc Marquez win. You could see Fabio Quartararo win, Brad Binder, the Thriller Jack Miller, among others. And Bastianini versus Marquez, I think that's a battle that you got to keep a close eye on moving forward in MotoGP.
I gotta agree. I think that's going to be a really fun battle. It's going to be a very exciting MotoGP season. We encourage everyone to be sure to subscribe to GRIDnet Network right here as we follow MotoGP. We're coming up. IndyCar, what an exciting race. What an exciting finish we had over there.
Yeah, really great Long Beach race as we get into what was the final race of this 11-race marathon weekend here of the series we cover at Grid Network. It was the NTT IndyCar Series, the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach, and it had a great crowd, great weather, and a great pit stop that helped Joseph Newgarden get the win as Penske maintains their perfect start to the 2022 season. Newgarden got overcut to pass Alex Palou during the pit stops and then held off Roman Grosjean, who was on the red alternate tires. The caution came out during the final lap, but it looked like Newgarden pretty much had it locked up anyway, unless he made an unlikely mistake. So, Kobe, we'll go to you first. How impressed were you with Newgarden's win? And what are your thoughts on how IndyCar handled the caution that came out on the final lap?
Well, Ben, I thought it was a very impressive win by Joseph Newgarden. It was really fun watching him, Alex Palou, and Roman Grosjean go at it there at the end, and also Colton Hurdler until his unfortunate accident, which we're going to talk a little bit more in a bit. And I got a comment right there from Humper D saying that Marc Marquez's comeback was the highlight of the race. Thank you for sharing your comment, Humper D. That was definitely quite a impressive recovery drive by Marc Marquez, and I encourage all of our viewers, please leave your comments down in the chat below. And I'm not necessarily just impressed with Joseph Newgarden. I'm impressed with Team Penske, currently batting at 100%. So far to start off the IndyCar season, and you look at the championship standings, all three of their drivers are in the top 5 with Newgarden leading McLaughlin now. Then you have Will Power up there as well. Team Penske's program is definitely hitting on all cylinders, and they're very strong to start off this current season. And it's looking like Team Penske is definitely the team to beat right now in the NTT IndyCar Series, which isn't a big surprise at all. And in regards to how IndyCar handled the final caution of the race, I really don't think they had a choice there. Takuma Sato's car was at a bad part of the track, and if they're coming at full speed, that was the chances of a very nasty accident. So I didn't have a problem with that. I didn't really see anybody making a big fuss about it on social media either, because there was literally nothing IndyCar could have done. And even if we would have continued going green, Joseph Newgarden looked like he was just going to win the race anyway, so it really wouldn't have made big of a difference. But they could not, in good faith, keep the race green until the checkered flag, because Sato's car was sitting in a really bad spot.
Yeah, Kobe, I agree. Scott McLaughlin led the points after Texas. Well, now we have his teammate atop the standings. I think right now Team Penske is the team to be in the NTT IndyCar Series. And regarding Joseph Newgarden's win in Long Beach today, gotta say, that was really, really impressive. He can now say he joins the likes of Michael and Mario Andretti, Alan Sir Jr., Paul Tracy, among others, to win on the historic streets of Long Beach. That's pretty cool to join that list of incredible IndyCar drivers. And I didn't have a problem with what happened on the last lap. I think it was the right decision by IndyCar. And like you mentioned, Kobe, even if they had a green, white checker finish, I don't think anyone could have caught Joseph Newgarden. You got to give a call to Romain Grosjean as well. I truly thought he was going to win his first career IndyCar win today. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But I don't think it's long until we see Romain Grosjean with Andretti Autosport ending up in victory lane.
Yeah, Adam, of course, great run by Grosjean as well, and I'd have to agree. I think it's only a matter of time before he pulls into victory lane himself and gets his first IndyCar win. And Newgarden, what can you say? Great race for him. Great start to the season for Penske, of course. And like you said, Adam, this is the one race after the Indy 500, of course, certainly the second crown jewel of the IndyCar series. So I know he's been wanting to win this race for a long time. And I have to agree with both of you. I think Newgarden probably had the win locked no matter what, and absolutely the right decision to bring out the caution there at the end. It was something that IndyCar couldn't have ignored. Now, let's talk about Colton Hurdler. Hurdler was the pole sitter, led until the first set of pit stops when he fell to third. He had the slower pit stop between him and Newgarden and Palou, who were behind him. They leapfrogged him. Later in the race, Hurdler had gotten back up to the second position when he locked up at the end of the backstretch and went into the concrete wall, ending his day. Now, this drew comparisons to last year's race at Nashville, and Colton even said in his interview himself, in his words, it was a stupid mistake. So, Joe, we'll bring you in here for this one. Are Colton Hurdler and Andretti Autosport championship caliber at this point of the season with what you've seen so far?
I have to say, with what I've seen so far, no, I don't believe Colton Hurdler and Andretti Autosport are at that championship caliber. That's Team Penske. They're looking really strong, and especially Joseph Newgarden getting 2 wins now and the points lead. Colton Hurdler, 1 top 10s finish so far, and that's it. This is not the kind of way to win a championship. You can't push yourself so hard when you lose the lead and crash like you saw in Nashville and then here. And then when you look at how he lost the lead, through pit stops, Alex Palou had the fastest pit stops in that first round. Joseph Newgarden, the second fastest. So that is how Colton Hurdler went from the lead to third place. He was just baffled by it. He was radioing the team, how did this happen? And at the end, they had to say, well, we had the slower pit stop. This is not how you win championships. And for Colton Hurdler, he has the talent to go out there and get the wins. I think the big test is making sure when the team has a bad pit stop, just keep focused. Don't push too hard, because a lot of folks were comparing it to what happened in Nashville. And I truly believe it's just one of those deals where he could turn it around. And Andretti Autosport, you got to get a little bit faster pit stops, but at the end, they're not exactly championship caliber yet.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Joe. They're not championship caliber yet. I think they have the potential to be a championship caliber team, the number 26 Gamebridge Honda squad. But mistakes like today, Colton said himself, it was a stupid mistake, and stuff like that cannot happen. He arguably had one of the fastest cars all weekend in Long Beach, and he just threw it away there. Just like the comparison to Nashville, had the fastest car in the Music City and threw it away. If you want to be championship caliber, you cannot be making those silly mistakes like that, because this was Colton Hurdler's race to lose, and he ended up losing it. There's still a lot of time to, obviously turn everything around and become a championship caliber team. But if you want to get up there and compete with the Joseph Newgarden, Scott McLaughlin, Will Power, all of Team Penske, Colton Hurdler should have been able to capitalize on the speed he had today, because Andretti Autosport gave him a great car, and it also doesn't help that they had the slowest pit stop compared to the others at the front. It's going to be interesting to see if Colton Hurdler can have a much better race weekend coming up at Barber.
I'd have to agree at this point. I think Penske are the clear favorites for the championship. I know it is still early, but you can't get off to a better start than 100% win rate, as you mentioned, Kobe. So I think Penske certainly are a cut above everybody else so far as we've started this season. including Scott McLaughlin. But for this race in particular today, it was a bit of a rough weekend for him. It included a mistake in the middle of a race, hitting the inside wall, getting spun around. He ended up down in 14th. So how should McLaughlin respond, and is Alabama a good opportunity for him to rebound?
Well, the best way for McLaughlin to respond is forget about the rough day you had today in Long Beach and move on to the next one because he's still second in the championship, only a few points behind Joseph Newgarden. So even on a bad day for Scott McLaughlin, he's still good championship wise. So I don't think there's anything he needs to be concerned about. Just put this one behind him and move on to the Honda Grand Prix in Alabama when they get to Barber Motorsports Park. And yeah, because Scott McLaughlin, he's really starting this year off strong. He as we remember, he could have went two in a row after he won the Firestone Grand Prix at St. Pete. He was only one corner away from winning on the high banked oval at Texas until Joseph Newgarden swept around the outside and won the race. So if I'm McLaughlin, I'm not worried at all. Just Alabama's going to be another great opportunity to have a great day.
Yeah, I think what Scott McLaughlin needs to do is put this race behind him. I think everyone's entitled to a bad race, and I think it was Scott McLaughlin's bad race today, even though he finished 14th. And like you guys mentioned, the next time we see IndyCar is at the legendary Barber Motorsports Park in Alabama. So, yeah, Scott McLaughlin is still second in points, and he's still a contender for the championship. I know he'll put this race behind him and go give it his all and give it his best when IndyCar goes to Alabama on May 1st.
Yeah, well, McLaughlin is a champion in his own right, and he has made the transition to the IndyCar Series better than I think anybody could have expected. And like we said, he's had a great start to the year. You're entitled to a bad weekend every once in a while. I think that was his case today, and he still came away 14th. It could have been worse. So I think McLaughlin certainly has it in him to bounce back sooner rather than later. So we'll see if he can do that in the next race. And now we'll go now we'll go over to Joe here for an update on the Racer Spotlight.
Yeah, quite a lot of racing going on, as we mentioned, and this includes some of the racers that we follow each and every week. And we encourage everyone visit their profiles. You'll see their social media tags and, of course, links to websites in our video description. Starting with some of the female racers, Samantha Tan completed her first race weekend at Daytona International Raceway. Second place in her first race. Eighth place just due to a little bit of bad luck in the second race for the Ferrari Challenge. We encourage everyone to be sure to subscribe to watch our show Winning the Motorsports later this week. Also visit the website Behind the Helmet for in-depth articles on the women behind the helmet. Bubba Wallace was the only black racer we saw racing this weekend. NHRA had an off weekend, and Jesse Wuji sat out in Martinsville. Encourage everyone to visit the African American Racer Association to learn more about their current racers and Hall of Fame. And Racing Pride, Richard Morris made his debut in Sports Prototype Cup, earning the pole and finishing third in his debut race weekend there. So a big shout out to him. And we encourage everyone to visit Racing Pride website to learn about the ambassadors in motorsports program. And of course, visit all the drivers, check out our profiles, and be sure to cheer them each and every week. And one of the drivers we saw getting a lot of cheers each and every week has to be William Byron.
Yeah, reflecting on the Martinsville night race, the NASCAR Cup Series, the second short track race of the season, and saw a rather tame affair of the regular season. Chase Elliott led every lap up to the end of the second stage and lost the lead in the pits, and that turned out to be the difference between winning and losing. William Byron beat him off pit road, and he never looked back, becoming the first repeat winner of the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series season. Did you expect William Byron to be the first repeat winner of the year?
No, I didn't expect it. And I truly thought Chase Elliott was going to run away with this race. I predicted him to win on Pick a Winner yesterday. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But Chase Elliott had a dominant car all night long until stage 2. And then, he did have a top 10 finish, finishing in 10th. But I'm surprised William Byron is the first driver to repeat. I truly thought we would have seen somebody like Chase Elliott win, among others. Kevin Harvick is still looking for his first win. Brad Keselowski is in a new team this year. He's still looking for his first win. Chase Elliott, the only driver at Hendrick Motorsports not to win yet. He's still looking for his first win. So I surely thought we would have had another different winner last night. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I gotta say, congratulations to William Byron and the entire number 24 Hendrick Motorsports team. And I think William Byron shared a message on the post-race show saying it was 1 year that his mom went through a lot, and his mom was actually at the track to see William Byron win. So that was pretty cool to, after what William Byron's mom went through last year, to see her at the track cheering her son on to win. I gotta say, that's pretty cool.
I didn't expect it to be Byron. I expected it to be Kyle Larson after the tear he went on last season. I expected, like Adam, I expected Chase Elliott to kind of run away with it. So I did expect Hendrick car to win, but not William Byron. And I got to say, this has been a great start to his season. I think the best start to any season of his young Cup Series career so far. And, Hendrick Motorsports, I think we're at that point of the season where we can start looking at, has a team pulled ahead or not? I know Byron's only our first repeat winner of the year, but I think like Team Penske in the IndyCar series, I think if you're looking for a team to beat right now in the Cup Series, look no further than Hendrick Motorsports because, like we said, I think it's only a matter of time before Chase Elliott pulls his number 9 car in the victory lane and the rest of the team are firing on all cylinders as well. So, all credit to William Byron. Like I said, didn't expect it to be him. I expected it to be Larson, but the way HMS has been running so far this season, I can't say I'm surprised.
Yeah, I expected it to be Kyle Larson as well, but you mentioned Kyle Larson going on a tear last season. So far, outside of the victory at Fontana, Larson hasn't gone on a tear this year. It's just been one problem after another, and I believe Kyle Larson is sitting 16th right now in the driver's points, which doesn't matter. Obviously, says we're going by wins here in the playoff system, and it's really been surprising to see Larson as in his current form that he's not performing like he was last year. But I'm sure that number 5 HendrickCars.com Chevrolet team is going to get it all figured out. Very surprising to see William Byron win at Martinsville. I think I picked him for pick a winner at Richmond. Unfortunately, I picked him my week too soon. If I would have waited a week, I would have gotten an extra pick a winner point, so I would have 12 right now instead of 11. But definitely kudos to William Byron. It's been interesting watching him develop as a NASCAR Cup Series driver. Over the last few years, I know it got off to a slow start, but it finally seems like he's starting to really dig in now and become the NASCAR Cup Series driver we all expected when he rose through the NASCAR ranks quickly, going through the Truck Series and the NASCAR Xfinity Series all the way up to the NASCAR Cup Series. He had Chad Knaus on his pit box at one point, and then they put Rudy Fugle, who was really the brains of the Kyle Busch Motorsports Truck Series program, on the pit box for William Byron in the Cup Series, and it seemed like that's the right crew chief driver pairing right there, because those two, I think they're going to do a lot of great things together, and I expect them to win many more NASCAR Cup Series races. And we only had 5 cautions throughout the race, 1 green flag runs, and not the typical short track racing we're used to seeing. Compared to the Xfinity Series, we saw a lot of beating and banging and tempers flared. Many drivers said it was difficult to pass at Martinsville. If you listen to the radio, you could hear plowing tight, arrow push, stuck in a bubble behind the car head. Last weekend at Richmond, the fans were split on whether or not they enjoyed the race, and they thought it really lacked action. But for others, the strategic aspect of following the different strategies made Richmond a very compelling race to them. And starting with you, Ben, is it time for NASCAR to consider making changes to the new car in the short tracks, or is it like too soon and we need to wait for the teams to get more time to learn how the car behaves?
I got into this a little bit on Twitter with some people here, but I think I see both sides of it here. I have to admit, I voted no on the Jeff Gluck poll for both Richmond and Martinsville. I think Richmond as a whole was pretty lackluster. Obviously Denny Hamlin and the strategy aspect kind of saved the last 50 laps or so. But as a whole, I thought the race was pretty disappointing. And Martinsville even more so. I think I don't know. I think the poll is open for a little while longer. But last I looked, it was a landslide, even greater than like an 80-20 split. Fans saying that it wasn't a good race. Certainly not a good race by Martinsville standards. I understand that we are only 2 races in with this new car on short tracks, so it might be a little early, and I would say it actually is a little early to jump to conclusions entirely. It was also very cold at Martinsville. We're racing under the lights, which we haven't done in Martinsville for very long, so that maybe adds a couple of variables in there that NASCAR is not used to. And listen, I've praised the next-gen car. I think it worked wonders at Fontana. It's done great on the intermediate tracks. Certainly improved the racing there. I think NASCAR maybe has to start taking a look at how they can improve the package for the short tracks because, Martinsville is one of the most beloved tracks on the schedule. And, for the fan reaction to be that much of a landslide in terms of it not being a good race as opposed to being a good race, I think that NASCAR maybe should consider taking a look at things and seeing, what they can do to improve the package, especially if we come back in the fall and we see a similar result there. We'll talk a little bit more about shorter races on Grid Encore tomorrow because that debate's kind of come up again on social media here. I think a lot of fans were disappointed when Martinsville lost 100 laps, but if Martinsville ever had to lose 100 laps, I guess it couldn't have happened at a better time because I don't know that anybody wanted to sit through another 100 laps of what we saw last night. So there's a lot of different opinions on that as well, but NASCAR, I think, ought to consider taking a look at things. It is still early in this new car's lifespan, but we're 2 races in. I think there are some concerns that need to be ironed out.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Ben. I can say, for those of you who don't know, I've been to Martinsville, so I know all about the history, and actually, I can say I have a good friend I know where I work, and actually, she was at Martinsville last night. So, to me, it wasn't a typical Martinsville race. I think the Xfinity race was more better than the Cup race, and I think it's, I can say I've enjoyed all the racing so far this year, but I think it's too soon, with this new car at a short track, and we'll see what happens going forward. Like you mentioned, Ben, when NASCAR comes back to Martinsville in the fall.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what Ben said about Martinsville losing 100 laps, and a lot of people were very upset at first that Martinsville was cut down to 400 laps from 500 laps, but like you were saying, I'm pretty sure that people did not want to sit through 500 laps of what we saw last night, because at that point you might put people to sleep. And coming to Martinsville, we always have high expectations that we're going to see an entertaining race. And last night's race was, some people had to call a stinker, and you're gonna have one of those races every now and then. And Ben, you also mentioned a Jeff Gluck poll. I'm actually looking at that right now. Currently has 14 hours left to vote, and with 28,045 people voting so far, 82% of race fans said that Martinsville was a bad race, and only 18% said that it was a good race. So overwhelmingly, NASCAR fans did not appreciate the type of racing that we saw on Saturday night under the lights at Martinsville Speedway. And I see some people who are more knowledgeable about this than us said on social media, and the people who are a part of the industry in NASCAR, they were saying that the colder temperatures definitely threw a curveball. And I also saw another comment saying that Goodyear made too good of a tire that just doesn't fall off like it needs to. So it seems like it's something that can hopefully be ironed out before we get to Martinsville later on in the season, because that's a very, very important race. And if the cutoff race at the end of the year is like the Blue Emu 400, I'm not sure what they're going to do next. At that point, might need to consider making some changes to the next gen cars on the short tracks. And the driver who dominated the first half of the race, Chase Elliott, very disappointed to lose the lead on pit road, and he faded down the running order after that, and he was no longer a factor. And all night long, we never saw a pass for the lead under racing conditions. The only pass for the lead happened on pit road. Just to give you some perspective, if you didn't watch the race, how disappointing the on-track product was. And Kyle Larson, Chase's teammate, finished in 19th place. Cole Custer in 21st after a penalty on pit road ruined his top 5 night. And it looked like Cole Custer was gonna have one of his best runs yet in the NASCAR Cup Series from start to finish. If you exclude his only career victory he got at Kentucky Speedway in 2020, Cole Custer, I believe Fox Sports said that was the longest he ran in the top 5 of his NASCAR Cup Series career up to date. And one of the biggest shockers of the night, it was Denny Hamlin. He finished in 28th. He had no pace all night, getting lapped. And remember, Martinsville is the cutoff race to the championship for later in the year. After Martinsville, for teams that struggled last night, how aggressive do they look into making changes with the setup for the next race, where a win could mean competing for a championship?
Well, I think, I'm totally surprised Denny Hamlin won at Richmond, but, Denny Hamlin is always a factor at Martinsville, and I'm surprised he didn't have a good showing last night. It is in his home state of Virginia still, and he probably had a lot of friends and family in the stands, so obviously, they were disappointed of the result for Denny Hamlin. Chase Elliott, I'm surprised he didn't win last night. It's gonna, to me, it's still early in the season, and next weekend we go to a completely different track, Bristol Dirt. So it's gonna be interesting to see how everything develops. And I think now I think teams have to start to be a lot more aggressive if they want to win. Kind of weird that we've seen, the first 2-time winner this year was William Byron. I don't think anybody expected that. So it's going to be interesting to see going forward, especially when we head to Bristol Dirt on Easter Sunday next week.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about an aggressive change. How about going to do something that the Cup Series has only done one other time in the last half century? It was just last year when they raced on the dirt at Bristol then. I think every team is going to have to make some aggressive changes to their mindset, not just at Bristol Dirt, but the next race after that when we go to Talladega, which is, again, a completely different track than a flat little half-mile oval here. We're going to what's admittedly still a half-mile track, but a track with completely different banking on a completely different surface. And then something, otherworldly when we get to Talladega, a completely different style of racing there. So I think it's not just going to be the teams that struggled last night. Everybody's going to have to be aggressive in how they change their mindset of how we race for the next 2 weeks. But especially for the teams that struggled, obviously, once we get back into the heart of the season and go to some more normal tracks and intermediates and shorter tracks that resemble what we saw at Martinsville, they definitely have some data that they need to take a look at now and try to make some changes to improve upon that. Especially considering Martinsville's status as a playoff race now, it's that much more important.
Yeah, it's going to be super important, that cutoff race, the final race before the playoffs. If you're Denny Hamlin, who had a really horrendous night, it was an uncharacteristic night for Denny Hamlin to run that poorly. But it seems like the Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas were really off for most of the night, that they weren't able to make any significant headway. I know Kyle Busch was able to have a decent night. And I also believe Kurt Busch as well for 2311 Racing. But for the most part, the Toyotas couldn't really do anything last night at Martinsville, especially Denny Hamlin. I just could not believe how he lacked speed in that car. He was a struggling. He didn't look like Denny Hamlin, who's won at Martinsville numerous times. So I think out of all of the teams who competed last night, the number 11 team is the team that's going to have to be the most aggressive with setup changes the next time we come to Martinsville, because I expect him to be in the hunt to go race for a championship out west in Phoenix. And looking at the next 2 races, you mentioned it, Ben, I think they're going to be obviously big wild card races. Really, anybody can win at Bristol Dirt. We saw looking at last year's race, so unpredictable. We saw Daniel Suarez in that number 99 Trackhouse Chevrolet. He ran extremely well last year, got a top 5 finish at Bristol Dirt. And since Suarez had very little dirt experience, nobody expected him to run as well as he did. I'm sure Suarez hoped he'll be able to emulate that run he had last year at Bristol Dirt, because Martinsville, he was off all night, multiple laps down for most of the racing, and couldn't really do anything, while his teammate Ross Chastain ran well, finished inside the top 10, top 5, I believe. And Talladega is just a wild card. And we might need to make a Wheel of Destiny for NASCAR at Talladega, because anybody can really win that race. And moving forward, it's going to be interesting to see how everything shapes up.
Week 2 of the grid rankings out, and Shane Van Gisbergen reclaims the lead over Scott McLaughlin. Scott McLaughlin dropped to 6th, and Joseph Newgarden moved up to 3rd with his win today. IndyCar, they only have 3 races completed this year so far. The top 4 having at least 2 top 10 finishes. Alex Rins, he is ahead of Bastianini, a flip of the MotoGP standings, and Ross Chastain is the lone NASCAR Cup Series racer in the top 10. Now, every series except World Rally Championship and W Series has had a repeat winner. So, Kobe, starting with you, out of the repeat winners of Leclerc, Mitch Evans, Joseph Newgarden, Bastianini, and Shane Van Gisbergen, plus William Byron, who we all say is the biggest surprise repeat winner, who is most likely to win again out of the repeat winners?
And you're probably going to be surprised, because I'm actually not going to say Shane Van Gisbergen, but looking at the next race on the schedule, I got to say Joseph Newgarden. If you look at his record at Barber Motorsports Park, Newgarden has won there a total of 3 times, and that's always been a really good track. 14 Penske, and carrying the momentum from winning on the oval at Texas and the street course at Long Beach. Joseph Newgarden will be entering Barber with a huge steam of momentum, and I think he'll have a great opportunity to go to victory lane in Alabama.
Well, being the Supercars expert here at Grid Network, I think y'all know where I'm going. 3 letters, SVG. I think Shane Van Gisbergen does get it done the next time we see the Red Bull Supercars Championship in action. He's on another level right now in that number 97 Red Bull Ampol Racing Holden Commodore. What he's doing so far this year in the championship is incredible. So for me, I'm saying SVG.
Just a quick look at the calendar. I don't think SVG is going to get a chance to claim this little stat we've got here, because I think Charles Leclerc is going to claim it before he even gets a chance when Formula One goes to Imola in a couple of weeks. I think Ferrari are just firing on all cylinders right now. They're the strongest we've seen probably since 2017, 2018, when Sebastian Vettel got up there and challenged Lewis Hamilton in the first half of those seasons. I think Charles Leclerc is going to be our next repeat winner, among the repeat winners already that we've had this season in Imola.
And with that being said, it's now time for our Grid One Shining Moment from this motorsports weekend. There's we covered a lot of races here at Grid Network from all points across the world. So starting with you, Ben, what's your Grid One Shining Moment?
Putting me on the spot here going first. Let's see. There's a couple I can think of here. I want to give a shout out to Marc Marquez, even though I know I'm not the biggest MotoGP analyst here on this network. I have to say I've been so impressed with the job Marc Marquez has done throughout his entire career at Circuit of the Americas. And he proved it once again today. I've got a feeling if he had gotten a better start, he might have been up there contending for yet another win. It would have been, unthinkable based on what happened to him a few weeks ago and that horrifying accident that he had. So all credit to him for just showing up at the track again, let alone being as competitive as he's been so soon after that. I also want to give a shout out to Austin Dillon, who I think is quietly having one of the best starts to a season of his Cup Series career. Third place at Martinsville was a great run for him. And I've got a feeling if we had a slightly different package, he might have been able to make some moves and maybe even go for the win in the closing laps of the Cup race. So big shout out to him as well.
Yeah, and for me, I have two Grid One shining moments. As you mentioned, Mark Marquez. I was very impressed with his drive today. A really bad start had him in last place, and then he drove all the way through the field to finish sixth today. I thought that was absolutely remarkable because typically, if you're out back in MotoGP, you're not going to gain that many positions. But he was able to go through the entire field. If the race had been, maybe like 10 laps longer, I know MotoGP they don't run extremely long races for obvious reasons. But if there were like 10 more laps in the race, Marc Marquez may be able to get up to his highest third place. But I have a feeling if Mark did not have a really bad start, he might have gone all the way to the lead and won the race, as people like to call him, the King of Coda. And my second Grid One shining moment has to go to Sebastian Bourdais for his strong recovery drive yesterday in the IMSA race at Long Beach. Bourdais, he set a really fast lap in qualifying. Looked like he was going to run away with the race, and then had that incident in the hairpin. And at that point, I was thinking, oh, this might be game over for the number 01 Ganassi Cadillac. But then Bourdais, he dug deep, and he ate into those seconds, like unlike anything I've ever seen before in IMSA prototype racing. And he carved his way through the field and got back to the lead before he dove into the pits and handed it back to Ringer van der Zande. And as you know, Sebastian Bourdais has been a veteran of the NTT IndyCar series for so many years, and with Kyle Kirkwood coming in, which I believe is going to be a great American superstar in the IndyCar series someday. Really great top 10 result for him and AJ Foyt racing today. And for Bourdais, being older now, he's still showing people he still has the speed, he still has the drive and desire to go out there, compete for wins at a very high level, and show people that he still has what it takes to be an IndyCar driver. But right now with Ganassi, Bourdais really seems at home, and I think Seb is going to be a contender for the championship. And Humperdinck's one shining moment, you say, will be Cam winning pole for Moto 2 at Coda, and say sadly he threw away the race.
For my one shining moment, I would have to say that goes to Mitch Evans and the Jaguar team at Formula E. Entering this race weekend, he only had 1 point. Just been not a great start to the season. Last year, we all know he entered that last race with a shot at the championship, but right at the start, the car didn't go and he got hit from behind with Eduardo Montara. I was starting to wonder, will we see Mitch Evans be competitive this year at all with Jaguar? Could he potentially be replaced? Well, all those doubters, including myself, that were starting to wonder, they've been silenced because he came in and then he won race 1. Yesterday, as we were recapping, we were talking about how can he put enough consistent runs because he always seems to be inconsistent. He must have been listening to us and got motivated because he went out there and got that win again. 2 in a row, the first repeat winner for Formula E. We know in Monaco last year how he was very close to winning that race. Just power management was his Achilles heel. And now I think he's going to go there as one of the favorites in Monaco.
And for me, my Grid 1 shining moment has to go to someone who did something really cool at Hickory Motor Speedway Saturday night. Akori Ogata from Japan won a late model feature at Hickory Motor Speedway here in North Carolina. I gotta say, that's pretty cool to see someone from Japan winning a NASCAR race here in the United States. That doesn't happen that much. So, and also another Grid 1 shining moment has to also go to Marc Marquez. After what we saw in Indonesia with his high side accident, coming back, dropping back at the start of the race today at Coda, and just leapfrogging everybody to get a 6th place finish. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think he is officially back, and I think he will be a contender for the MotoGP World Championship. And that does it for another Grid Post Race show. Be sure to visit our Patreon. Subscribe and invest in the Grid Network. Or you can go buy me a coffee. And if you want to buy someone a coffee, our colleague Joshua Birch would appreciate it. He did a lot of action this weekend on his YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe. So also I called Josh after everything he did across the motorsports world this weekend. Your investment helps keep Grid Network on the air. And invest by using public.com. Use our referral code GRIDnet. Get $5 to invest in the stock market. Make friends and use tools to invest in the stock market. Own your future. Build your portfolio. Public.com. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have 340 subscribers, and also be sure to follow our website at gridranking.com. And we're all over social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter, including Grid History at grid_history, where our colleague Matt White posts a different motorsports history event each and every day. And taking a look at the schedule this week, tomorrow night, join Brendan and Ben for Grid Live Encore. And then Wednesday, join Kobe and I for Grid Tonight. Thursday, join Joe and Daniel for the Women in Motorsports. And with that all being said, for Joe Samaniego, Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish, and Ben Schneider, I'm Adam Lemery saying thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.